Hello everyone, it's Lindsay and today is Tip Tuesday and I've been promising you that I would do a little short video on some different ways to use the badge stamps from the Illustrated Faith Revival Camp Kit. So these are the two. This is the Kit 1, this is Kit 2, and what these come with are these little badges that go along with the badges that are in the kits. And then they have these title words, and the title words are meant to layer up with these badge stamps or use them separately, but they are meant to kind of layer together. So I wanted to show you some different options for layering, maybe some ideas that you hadn't thought of. So let's go ahead and I'm going to try to kind of edit this and go through it quickly so it doesn't take forever. But I'm going to load up one of the badges here. And the first way, I'm going to do all of them on separate cardstock. You could stamp directly into your Bible if you wanted to, but I'm just going to do them on cardstock. And I kind of like stamping on cardstock and then cutting it out. That way I don't have to worry about bleed through and things like that. So the first way is to stamp in a light colored ink. So you can use whatever your favorite inks are, whether that be pigment inks, chalk inks. I'm using a Distress Oxide ink. I'm making sure I get quite a bit of ink on this stamp because it is a light color. So I'm using the Tattered Rose Distress Oxide. And so I'm going to go ahead and stamp that down. Now my stamp is clean. It just looks blue and dirty because I was stamping with dye-based inks earlier. And so it did stain my stamp. But I'm just going to go ahead and clean that off. And so now that is stamped in a light colored ink. And then you can take the corresponding title, which is Courage for this particular one. And then I'm going to stamp that in a darker ink. So I'll go over it with black. So this is probably the simplest kind of no-nonsense way to work with these stamps. So now I've got that pink badge with the word courage. And you could stamp in like a dark gray, an antique kind of brown color if you didn't want the contrast of the black on that light pink. But so that is the first way. The next way is going to use some heat embossing. So I'm actually going to use a different stamp here. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to stamp in a dark color. So dark reds, dark blues, you could even do black. I'm going to stamp in Fired Brick Distress Oxide ink. It's a really deep red color because the image for this badge in the set is kind of a deep red color. So I went ahead and stamp that. Now I'm going to heat emboss over this. Now Distress Oxide inks are a blend of pigment and dye inks. So they do take a little bit longer to dry. So I do want to go ahead and hit that with my heat tool really quick, just to make sure it's good and dry. Okie dokie. And then again, I'm going to prep this with an EK Success powder tool because this is an ink that takes longer to dry. I want to make sure that there's no wetness at all on that stamp. Okay, and so then I'm going to take the fellowship title. And we're going to stamp this with Versamark ink. And so Versamark is a clear, sticky ink. If you have questions about heat embossing, I'll link my heat embossing Tip Tuesday video down below for you guys. So just make sure that's good and inked up. And then I'll stamp it down. I'm not going to press too hard because I don't want to smush out that word. So you can't really see where the stamping is because it's clear. But get a scrap piece of paper here. I'm going to cover this with some opaque white embossing powder. You could use colored embossing powders, like if you had like a light pink or something like that, but I'm just going to do white. Tap off the extra, make sure that I don't have any stray embossing powder, which it looks pretty good. And then I'll go ahead and heat set this and melt it. Okay, and I'm going to let that cool for a second. Oops, I totally did not cool it long enough. I was trying to brush off that extra powder. So don't do what I did. I smudged it, but you can see you've got that white heat embossed on the red stamping, and that was my oops, but normally it's a nice clear impression. So I'll go ahead and clean this up. Okay, the next one, I don't get super clear impression with. I've tried it a couple times, but it's just a different way to do these. So I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss the base stamp and then stamp over it with Stays On ink. So I'm going to stamp this with some Versamark, but I'm first going to prep my page because I am going to be using quite a bit of embossing powder. I'm going to ink up the stamp. And I think this works best, this particular technique, with the badges that have a more solid center to them. The ones that have the little like crisscross hash lines, like these ones here, may not work quite as well for this technique. But I'm going to make sure that's good and inked up with Versamark, which again is a clear sticky ink. Stamp that down. You can't really see it. Okay, and then I have some green embossing powder. So this would be a fun way to use some colored embossing powders. Tap off the extra. And I didn't do a good job at prepping the page, so I have a lot of loose, which I could go and clean up, but for the sake of this video, I'm not going to worry about it. And then I'll go ahead and heat set this until it is melted. Okay, so now I have this heat embossed badge. Now, because heat embossing kind of makes it like a plastic coating, it's shiny and slick, you want to use something like Stays On ink. I don't use Stays On ink very often, but Stays On ink is meant to be stamped over things that are a slick surface. So let's go ahead and get the title, which is Commit. And then I'm going to go ahead and ink this up with Stays On ink. Stays On is permanent. It will stain things. So just be careful when you're stamping with Stays On. I want to make sure it's good and covered. And then carefully, because that surface is going to be slick, stamp that over. Now you don't get a completely perfect impression with that, but you can see you get that black on the heat embossed. If you're wanting some fun, you know, texture or interest, something like that. Stays On is hard to clean off of your stamps, so it will stain your stamps. Just heads up on that. That's just kind of the nature of working with Stays On. And I'm using a Lawn Fawn stamp chamois, and it's kind of just the easiest way for me to get my stamps clean. Okay, so the next one is another easy one. So let's go ahead and take this mountain one. Okay, now this is going to be ghost stamping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ink up, let's say with a darker color, but you like the color, you just don't like how intense the color is. So I'm using Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide ink. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stamp this off on a separate piece of scrap paper, and then I'm going to stamp that ghost image down. So this is similar to stamping with a light colored ink, but if you don't have a lot of inks and you want to kind of expand the range of colors that you have, you can kind of do this ghost stamping technique, and then you can go in with a darker ink to stamp the title. So I'll go ahead and stamp that in blue, or I'm sorry, the black. And so now you've got, similar to that light stamping look there. Now this next one is a little bit finicky, but it does work. So I'm gonna load up this heart stamp here. And then I have some double-sided, or not double-sided, sorry, full-backed sticky notes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stamp on the sticky side of the sticky note. And I'm going to stamp the title, so I'm doing heart. So again, I am stamping on the sticky side of the sticky note. And this is because stamp images are reversed or mirror, and so just trust me, this is the way to do it. So I'm going to stamp down on the sticky side. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is going to be a mask, so I just kind of want an idea of the shape of this word. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and quickly fussy cut around this. You do want to give yourself some room. You don't want it too perfect. And that just makes it easier to stamp the final step, which I'll show you here. So I'm just loosely cutting around. Again, this is sticky side up. Okay. And then we're going to turn this over and stick this down in the center of the stamp. So I'm creating a stamp mask. So you can see where that's going to go in the center of that stamp. So now I can go ahead and ink this up with whatever color ink, whatever kind of ink you want. Okay, and then before you stamp, you want to remove that mask. So what that did was that protected it so that no ink got in that center area of the stamp. I can go ahead and stamp that down. And then now I can stamp the title portion in the center of that because it's left a little blank area. And so now you can do black on black and still have the title be able to be seen. So there are a few different ways. You could also, ink these stamps up with big brush markers if you wanted multiple colors on there. Kind of play around. There's a lot of different ways you can use these layering stamps. If you have some suggestions, leave those down in the comments for me. If you have questions, leave those in the comments for me. Check out the description box for links to the products mentioned today, as well as a blog post with up-close photos of each one of these techniques if you want to take a look at that. Give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.